I mean, that's actually what I'm getting at, is that that's sort of central to what I want to talk about today.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you think about it, and look, I don't want any pretense or any kind of, oh, I figured some kind of shit out. Because we're all going through this at the same time. We're all living moment to moment and trying to
Yeah.
make sense of our life as it's been up to this point and where we're at now and where we could possibly go.
For sure.
At least we ought to be trying to do that. And so you either want to try and answer that question or you don't. But
Yeah.
hopefully, if you do, which I figure on a subconscious level,
Everyone does.
everyone does, but then there's degrees of how accepting you are of that along your life. And the thing is
Yeah.
that a lot of people, I would assume, just based on my own anecdotal experience and people in my family and that I've known, is that they don't really start to question those type of things until they get older, like
Yeah.
middle age, like midlife crisis type of stuff. And that's kind of like that's the social meme that we have around that type of thing. And it's sort of, in a way, it's sort of used to make fun of people who start to question their place in the world.
Yeah.
Like a middle aged man, get like divorces his wife of so many years and gets depressed and buys a sports car and lives reckless because they want to recapture their youth or whatever. And
Right.
that's sort of the meme and the way it's painted. And it's sort of, I guess, in a way, it could put people off of the idea of having a phase like that in your life. But
Yeah.
ultimately, that's just like a surface level interpretation of it. And
Yeah. No, but
the truth is
that's
that that's the progression that everybody's life ought to be taken.
yeah.
Like there's no sense in saying you get to a certain age and then you're not obligated to continue learning.
Right. So I want to get so I want to get on that level. That what is that philosophers? I already forgot it. Actually, I ain't even done with
Okay,
them.
well we can transition to that. This ain't a
What was his
philosopher
name?
though. This is not. I'll read the quote. Remember how long you've been putting this off, how many extensions the gods gave you, and you didn't use them. At some point, you have to recognize what world it is that you belong to, what power rules it, and from what source you spring, that there is a limit to the time assigned to you. And if you don't use it to free yourself, it will be gone and will never return. And then there's another sort of extended part of the quote that says, think of yourself as dead. You have lived your life. Now, take what's left and live it properly. What doesn't transmit light creates its own darkness.
Straight up.
Right. Okay, so I mean this person's not really, they're not known for being a philosopher in history. This is Marcus Aurelius.
Mm-hmm.
They're an emperor of the Roman Empire in like 160, the 160s AD.
Yeah.
So almost 1,000 years ago. He's often, he kind of presided over the almost the apex or the end of the good years of the Roman Empire.
Yeah.
So like after his death, things kind of started to go downhill for Rome
Yeah.
because of, I don't want to get into a whole historical diatribe, but corruption,
Yeah.
to over expansion, cultural breakup, that type of thing. But he's most well known, I mean, aside from being an emperor, so one of the most powerful people in the world, akin to, a US president or a European prime minister. Even
Yeah.
more so because, I mean, think about it. The Roman Empire at this point spanned all the way from
It's huge. Yeah.
England to Egypt.
Wow.
So, yeah. But
Yeah.
he wrote, like, he had a personal sort of diary that he kept throughout his life and just wrote, notes to himself and
Yeah. This is
different
part of
mental
that.
exercises. This is called meditations. And these quotes are pulled from that. And there's a lot more. It's like a huge, it's hundreds of pages
Yeah.
that were translated. I mean, obviously he wrote it in Latin, I would guess. But yeah, so
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's like it's crazy to think that. I mean, not really in the long run, but it's interesting to think of the fact that somebody in his position of extreme power and influence was so reflective, and
Yeah.
wasn't really concerned with power for power's sake. He was legitimately concerned with like um virtues and like figuring out the way that the world works and stuff like that. Not in a physical sense because he kind of knew how it worked in a physical way because he was part of it, but how it works in the way that your mind interacts with the world and kind of generates your perception of reality. So here's some more
Yeah.
quotes. Here's some more quotes from him. The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. The universe is change. Our life is what our thoughts make it. No man is happy who does not think himself so. The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. Everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact. Everything we see is a perspective, not the truth. So, it's the reason that I'm touching on this because I'm not trying to be this is not a historical podcast or portraits of these historical figures. There's plenty of other people that do a better job of that. But it's the notion that this individual, this like historic individual, was keyed into the same notion that we have been talking about this whole time
Yeah.
about how the world that exists inside your mind isn't really separate from the world that exists outside of your mind, the one that you perceive.
Yeah.
Because, think about it this way. Everything that you'd consider to be a fact is based on a sense perception. So, like, you see that water melts, or, ice melts into water and evaporates into the clouds and stuff like that. But I mean, those are just energetics, changes in atoms that you're perceiving, and your brain is telling you that it's a certain way, and so it's all based on like a veil of perception
Yeah.
between you and that thing.
Right. Also true. So, as far as you're talking about perceiving the physical,
Uh-huh.
right, the physical realm of reality or whatever, and but yeah. So you're saying that these quotes are pulled out of his diary or his
Yeah.
personal,
Yeah.
yeah, archives?
Mm-hmm. There's a
So
lot more to it too. What's
what
up?
was the guy's name? What was the guy's name in their last session? Gosh, I'm sorry.
Oh, Rudolf Steiner.
Rudolph Steiner. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. He talked about sense perception too as part of the basis of our interactions with reality.
So the him and this Roman Empire emperor,
Uh-huh.
and hopefully us can transcend in the same. But I think that they're even in the huge separate time separation gap as far as when they live. When each one of them lived, they're still on the same kind of plane
Right.
of chain of thought. I guess is kind of what.
Well, I'll put it this way. I mean, the hope isn't that it's not to hope that you're going to ascend, but to realize that there's no separation between yourself and ascension.
Yeah.
And what we think of as the physical world is
Yeah.
just a veil separating us, our true, like our soul or whatever,
Right.
from its naturally ascended state. So think about
Okay.
this if you can. It's a little, I don't know, I was kind of high in the shower the other day,
Yeah.
and I was
Yeah.
thinking about, like, I don't know, I was just letting thoughts come to me. But so think about, try to imagine this if you can. Try it just for a couple of seconds, as long as you can. Try to perceive the world around you. Don't look at anything. Don't listen to my voice. Just try to perceive the world around you without using language. So imagine that you don't know what any words are, and you cannot think of words, and just try to be in that
Okay.
awareness
Okay.
for just a few seconds without letting yourself lean into language.
Okay. It's pretty. I've never. It's pretty cool. I never thought of like even trying to do something like that as far as meditating or put myself in a meditative state.
Right.
That's a good little angle, especially someone that doesn't really know how to do it at all or
Well,
has no.
it's not easy. You find that you're constantly, your
You're
brain's
kind of like,
constantly trying to
yeah,
associate language with the things that you're experiencing and the things that your brain, like your emotions and your thoughts. It's hard to separate them from language.
language, right?
So, well, now, I mean, I'm not going to ask you to do this, but sort of just hypothetically, imagine that you could or would be able to do that with all your senses and totally separate yourself from all of them.
Yeah,
Now, how do you think?
yeah. That's that's that.
So, I figure that's closer to what the base reality is. And so, like, when you die,
Mm.
I don't. This is all supposition, and we're obviously in speculative
No, go ahead,
psychology here.
please.
But when you die, your
Yeah,
senses cease to function.
right,
But it's not unimaginable that the sort of seed of your actual awareness at
right.
the
Should
heart of
be
all that continues on. Or not that it continues on, but that it's always existed
still existed. Yeah,
without the input of those senses, of the bodily sense perceptions. And now I'm not just coming up with that. Like, this is a big part of
yeah,
what Buddhists talk about, like the state of non-being. That's
right.
what happens, like when which is the nirvana, basically. So it's not hard to imagine. I mean, I don't know. I guess it's sort of uncomfortable.
It's a little tricky. Yeah,
But if
I
you were
mean,
dead, let's just say that your kernel of awareness that's behind all your senses is still there.
yeah,
It doesn't matter what happens to your body, because your body is
right,
just like an extension of
right,
that sensory core projected into three-dimensional reality so it allows you to interact with it.
right.
And so that presents, a sort of not
Platform
a
with it.
dilemma, but it kind of
Well,
gives you a different
yeah,
perspective on life that allows you to maybe hopefully interact with it in a different way. Because a lot of people, myself included, at various times, go through life with the sort of impression that this three-dimensional life, we don't want it to end.
yeah,
And not that we consciously think that it won't end, because it's sort of accepted that death is the inevitable consequence of everyone's life, but we try to
yeah,
live in the individual moment like we won't die.
right.
And I think that is kind of a dangerous thing. Not to say that it causes people to act recklessly, although it does, but what's
Yeah,
worse is that it causes people to not act at all
right,
because they think that there's no time limit to the things that they
right.
want to do, and that they can sit inside their mind and just sort of wish for it and
Here it
not
comes.
have to physically act on it.
Yeah, that's no good, no bueno.
Right.
That's kind of the state. And in all honesty, I always say like, for me personally, I'm kind of a fanatic. Like as far as like my mom calls it Peter Pan syndrome, but it's basically I'm always like, and I've caught, and it's true. Like as far as like maybe it's used as an escape. I don't know, but it's I'll notice a lot of times that my awareness of even just like physically what's around me, what's going on, it can be so. I can be in like a whole nother place, as far as in my mind, like fanatical. As far as like I'm always I'm always in like this imaginative state, but I'm not always in that state. But I guess what I'm getting at is that I can reflect on that because like even as a kid or whatever, like I always had a huge imagination
Yeah.
and kind of get lost in that, I think, in a sense. And so I forgot where I was even going with that, brother.
Well, no, right.
So
Well, we there's all kinds of things that our brain does to get us to
yeah,
not think about that. And it
yeah,
is socially reinforced too because of like the prevalence of media in entertainment, video games and stuff like that. Like think about,
Yeah.
I'm guilty of this big time. I mean, I'm a video game junkie if I let
Right.
myself. Like I can just play games all day if I want to. So think
Right.
about how long you're just sitting there looking at, pixels on a screen, and your brain's totally satisfied because you're engaged with
Yeah.
a puzzle, solving problems, strategizing, la la la,
Yeah.
but you're not physically doing anything. So it's taking that your
Yeah.
brain wants to, or like your body wants to use that energy and get out there and do stuff, but there's so many things in society that tempt us away from doing
Right.
real things, even though that's really what we want to do at the core of it. And we're okay with being
Right.
distracted by that because we think there's going to be a tomorrow. We think there's going to be another
Yeah.
chance to do it right next time.
Right. Right.
When there's in reality there's not. Do not act as if you had 10,000 years to throw away. Death stands at your elbow. Be good for something while you live, and it is in your power. It's like another quote from Marcus Aurelius. And I imagine in Roman times it was a little easier to not get distracted, but at the same time they had plenty of, like bread and circus, like that was invented by the Romans, that
Right.
concept where they give out free food and free entertainment to people to keep them, placated
Yeah.
and keep them, moving the machine along, so to speak.
Right.
But there's a lot, I don't know, it's a pretty wide open topic, but I think that sort of ties back into what we were talking about earlier with, trying to compare yourself to, oh, well, your project isn't going to be successful because you're trying to compare it to an already successful project. Not
Yes.
seeing that what lies in between those two is really only one thing. It's just action and persistence. And that's
Sure.
and for somebody who doubts.
Haters gonna hate, Holiday. Haters gonna hate.
Right,
But
well,
yeah,
it's not hate, it's really fear.
it's most definitely fear, more or less than anything, for sure. But I'm gonna talk. But you're definitely right as far as what separates that is the longevity of executing it, taking the action, and also just kind of staying on topic. You know what I mean? Staying
Yeah.
in a proficient, effective, way as far as collaborating with someone else. However you're putting it together, it's got to be consistent, like you said, and it's definitely going to. It takes the action, whether it's just
Yeah.
podcasting, recording if it's important, or just recording straight distortions.
Yeah.
I'm gonna start first.
But what drives that?
Yeah.
What allows you to sustain that? Like you can't not believe.
At the moment, yeah.
You can't not
gotta
believe in
have-
it and expect to continue doing it.
Most definitely not. You got to definitely keep that belief system intact, and the way you do that, I guess, in a team environment like this, is definitely just keeping each other inspired, keeping each other intrigued.
Mm-hmm.
For me, at least, because even if it's something like I'm automatically naturally by nature I'm lazy. I say that, but I'm super lazy. I'm a super lazy person, and I hate that about myself. But like you've been talking about, you've been going to the gym, you've been doing good, like that physical.
Yeah.
I need to get to the point where I'm actually doing that on a routine basis, and it's just that initial, I guess, for me. But I'm definitely looking forward to doing some stuff like that here and then. Even if it's just walking to the store for me. Like I've spent
Yep.
a lot of my life just sitting in front of this computer, whether it's doing something stimulating or not. Just general exercise has gotten me my ass, and I feel like that's affected my brain as far as, and even just the ideas and concepts or whatever we're trying to reach out to. I feel like for me, I haven't been stimulated, even though I'm sitting here. I'm not physically working. I'm not really mentally working much either these days, bro. So I'm just saying, like that lazy aspect of me is something that I hope to retain or to kind of fix. And believe it or not, these kind of things, like these discussions that we do, these sessions, they help that, even if it's temporarily.
Of course, yeah. Right.
But that momentum, like you're talking about, keeping it going. That's the trick, I think. And so, I'm not sure, but I think that if we figure that out, at least in my situation, I think that would be definitely an improvement.
Well, if you had some foreknowledge of the fact that you would die tomorrow,
right,
you'd be more willing to take action today.
Definitely.
So subconsciously, whether we're acting on it or acknowledging it or not, that's how we feel. We feel like we're entitled to continue on
Right.
when we're
That's some
absolutely
bullshit.
not.
That's bullshit.
And to
Yeah,
think
exactly.
so is, it's at the heart of modern society. Like everything that we value is centered around that. Like we don't think of health so much anymore as we do of medicine. And we don't think of action so much as we do like prescriptive entertainment. Like
Right.
people, some of the most applauded and valued people in society are actors.
Yeah. It's a
They're,
trip. You're right. That's kind of
you know what I
crazy.
mean, or
Yeah.
politicians, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I mean, athletes are a better example, but at the same time, what they're doing is performative, just like an
Yeah.
actor is, even though they're physically capable. They're not, they're. I'm not going to get into a. I'm not trying to
Yeah.
hate on athletes, obviously, but the situation where millions of people sit on their ass in front of a screen and watch these people and
Watch these.
assume
Yeah.
that somehow confers some vitality onto them, subconsciously or explicitly, is the problem.
Trip.
So, you know, well, it's a lot to ask of somebody to get out of that state of mind, but I think that it kind of can be done if you stop taking the present for granted, because
Yeah.
there's no separation. Like the present that we're in right now is the same present that we were in 15 years ago when we used to hang out, at the trailer house or whatever.
Yeah.
It's the same now that it was then. We're just, slowly inching towards oblivion. But we're
Yeah.
treating it like
It's
it'll
fixed.
never
Or yeah.
end.
Right.
And a lot of people carry on like that until it's, way too late.
I think that maybe something that keeps people hesitant from thinking, like putting themselves in that thought process on a daily, is fear. Like you're saying, like
Hmm.
I know, you know what I mean. I guess the lack of, like, I wouldn't want to think about, like, I could see how it would give you motive to want to, like, make the most of your life in the present. But you're exactly right. It is the same as it was, with that lapsed amount of time. So it's kind of interesting to think about it like that. I think that if I did it in a healthy way, without, I say without fear, but for some reason that fear is definitely in an engulfing emotion, for more than emotion, I guess. But for me, fear keeps me from doing a lot of fucking things.
Yeah.
Uh, Being even just humble enough to say that or admit that without, is that I'm fucking am scared of every, you know what I mean? I remember Jay was saying, like, what are you so afraid of? And
Right.
I don't know. I don't know what that some people may have more fear than others, but it
Hmm.
definitely is something that keeps me, or, others who, from thinking like that. I think as far as like what you're talking about is as far as living in the now, and knowing that tomorrow is not borrowed,
Yeah.
tomorrow is
Well,
not
any
promised.
conception you have of tomorrow is totally borrowed. You know
That's
what I
what
mean?
I'm
Like for
yeah, that's
any
what I'm
assumption you have that tomorrow is going to come
tomorrow is yeah,
is extremely entitled.
borrowed, yeah. Yeah.
Now that's not to say that you can't be proactive, and that's where I want to sort of go next, because I mean we can dwell on the existential
Yeah.
insanity as long as we want, but it's once you've established that that's sort of like the base line of reality, you kind of where do you go from there? Like how do you? And I think
Right.
it's sort of, I mean, that's what we were talking about last time, the facing the fear, and the difference between people who succeed or, make it, and people who don't and just sit in complacent sort of mundanity, is that they do face up to their fear, or that they somehow through some stroke of luck don't have that fear. And I think there are some people who kind of fit into that category, like
Yeah.
they've never considered that, or maybe they do and they're just very good at hiding it. But I
Right.
would I would bet that most people have that, like that back of their head fear where they don't want to extend themselves too far because they might fuck up and you know die, like metaphorically or literally, like they'll be embarrassed or they'll be rejected or whatever.
Right.
not realizing that that's more the point than anything else, and that you have an obligation to live. Like, you have an obligation to take your life seriously, understanding that it's not guaranteed. Like, you think of Bushido, like the samurai code or their philosophy or whatever, where the way of the warrior, like I was listening to the audiobook of Gorin no Sho, the Book of Nothingness by Musashi, and he talks about the way of the warrior as being absolute acceptance of death. Not that you want to die, but
Right.
that there's no difference. You're already dead, like Marcus Aurelius said, you know? You're
Yeah.
already dead, and if you can stay useless and not do anything with it, or you can like serve your purpose.
Yeah. For
And you
sure.
have to, like, you can't let some, you know, you can't let that get in your way.
They could act upon
Whether
it.
it's physical death or social, stigmatism, or
What was that book
having
called you just mentioned? The Samurai. The nothing.
Gorin no
Nothing.
Sho, the Book of Nothingness, no thingness.
That's
It's it's
yeah.
it's a book that's on the surface level. It's about how to kill people with a katana,
Yeah.
and he goes into great detail on the minutia of techniques that you can use to kill somebody with a sword. But beyond
Yeah.
that, it's applicable in a lot of ways to any sort of endeavor that you would take. So, like this
Yeah.
mind state that you have to be in, like he talks about the twofold gaze, like having a having your gaze set to where you're not focusing on anything in particular, but you're leaving your vision as wide open and neutral as
Right.
possible, so you can perceive the entirety of the things that are going on around you.
Yeah.
Which is a thing, like, I guess if you look at high level athletes and like race car drivers and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. But
No,
yeah,
that's
they definitely have to go in that state of mind.
yeah,
I would just assume. And
uh-huh.
even if it's like they
And having an
how do they?
intensity of your spirit, that he calls it,
It's got to
uh,
be. Yeah.
your spirit or your intent. Like, your intent has to be absolute, like
Right.
rock solid. If you
Right.
hesitate for a second, you're gonna die.
Like if you
And the
believe
only
that,
reason you
like,
would hesitate is because you think you're gonna die, and then you will.
yeah. Right. And that's the warrior's way, is what you're
Right?
saying.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
That's true.
according to that guy.
Yeah, for sure. Like I could see, but yeah, you definitely have to have like, as far as I believe that the cigarette is, I can reach out and touch it. You know, that belief system has to be so. I say belief system, but it definitely has to be so ingrained, like to where, like you're saying, if you hesitate for a second, then you will die. Like it's to that extremity. But
Yeah.
yeah, you definitely have to, and embrace it. I think, and I don't know. Sometimes for I keep talking about me like I'm such a selfish like fucker. Like this is a therapy session. I'm sorry, but I guess I'm just trying to relate to like the best I can and not sound like a complete
Well,
bozo. You're gonna have to,
everything I'm saying is about me too, and how I'm trying to live, but it's just through the lens of people that
yeah,
came before, and people
yeah.
figured it out back then. Surely, it's not impossible to apply it today.
Would assume not. Maybe it should be even easier with the just
But,
with
well,
technology in mind. I mean, because we have so much
it feels like
avail.
there's a social impetus against that type of thinking, because
Yeah,
we go to such great lengths apparently to protect people from thinking about their mortality, and that
what
no
do you mean?
matter what they do, there's going to be some system or some bureaucracy or some force there to protect you.
Yeah,
And it's really not true. I mean, as the current situations we're in would
yeah.
attest to.
See, you can't be going that far off into the deep end like that.
Well, that's. I
No,
mean,
I'm just
fuck it
saying.
though. I mean, I know what you're saying, and it's
No,
not.
like I'm complimenting you in a lot of ways. Like I'm saying, like, cause you be just tossing shit out like these real in depth, almost. You might not think this, obviously, because you never, because you're always gonna be a little bit hard on yourself. But like the shit that you just be talking about, like just very nonchalant, just like really in the depths of it is pretty. Sometimes it's like you could. That's like a whole another realm or something that we could dive into or whatever. Or I would have to
Yeah.
I have to sit back and kind of like absorb it. But needless to say, there's a lot of ground to cover
Uh-huh.
here.
Yeah, it's sort of it's daunting for sure. But that's why the impetus to do it now is so high in my, opinion.
I agree, like for sure.
And I
The
don't think
acting,
and I think that people, whether they are willing to do it themselves or not, I think people really want to hear that. Like
yeah,
they want to it resonates I mean, if it doesn't, whoever it doesn't resonate with doesn't have to be part of our audience, you know what I mean? But I feel like there's a
yeah,
lot of potential for it to resonate with lots of people, because it's not like we're coming up with this ourselves.
right.
I'm not just talking absolute shit. Like most of what I'm saying is based on things other people have said, and what not
It's
only that, but what many other people throughout
not just any
long
people,
periods of
like
time have said. People
great
that were
people.
incredibly successful and
Yeah,
individuated.
most definitely, and that's what it's a universal truth I think that we're speaking on, and
Yeah.
like you said, if it doesn't attach to certain people, then I think that's just really that's just a sign of evolution almost, evolution of just whether it's whatever, maybe just keeping everybody has personal fucking demons or whatever that's keeping them from that. At the end of the day, we're not talking about anything that's it's all progressive, it's all positive, it's all it's something that it's obviously done the research, it's history, it's something that it's not just a bunch of mobo jumbo, we're not making up all, but I think that it's clear that it's solid, and I think that if we're taking it their own way, you are most definitely. I'm kind of just sitting here slobbering on the mic.
Well, but then at the same time, I need you for this, because if I didn't have somebody to talk to, it'd be incredibly
Yeah,
challenging for me to try and just look into a camera and not say this to another person, because
yeah,
that sort of
and I
defeats the
get
purpose. Like, the point
yeah,
is for somebody to hear this and to appreciate it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't mean appreciate like appreciate me. I
no,
mean, like, listen, hear the information and realize that that's the basis of
right.
your life too. Just like I see it as the basis of mine, and I
Well, I could
understand that it's
definitely
the
do
basis
that,
of
man.
everyone's life, whether they
Yeah,
engage with it or not.
I'm privileged to do that because I definitely am. I can definitely do that because it's all real, as far as on this end. And so just being a listener or even contributor or whatever,
Hmm.
it's cool to hear. It's cool, really, bro. It's cool to hear it's cool to hear it and see it, and kind of, and even and engage in it with you because it's definitely a different angle. And I say that not because I've done a lot of research on this. I really haven't done known, what I mean. But at the end of the day, like I feel like I have been able to recognize something that has either potential or something that has, to do something bigger than what we might even expect.
Right.
Even when I say potential, I just mean like sometimes I can see it in. And I started like with doing web design and stuff, hiring other freelancers and kind of other creative. I could definitely, and the dude that I worked with a lot was always speaking about this, called him the visionary and the potential, but like you said, without action, potential can only go so far, So I think that
Hmm.
you can have all the potential in the world or see it in an individual or maybe in a team or an idea, but without executing, like you said, that act persistent.
Yeah.
That's something that, what I mean, having like an effective, persistent goal and reaching that goal. And,
Right, it's the discipline that ultimately determines it. Whether you're disciplined in something positive or not, the only thing that's going to make it to where you're seeing it through to the end
as you, yeah,
is understanding that, like, putting yourself. It's not like putting yourself aside, but it's like putting your intellect aside almost, to the point where you realize that you are sort of just a part of a bigger
yeah,
machine and you have a role to play. And the only way that you're going to do the things that you want to do is by playing that role.
right,
Or not even, I don't personally have like a clear conception of what I want to do, but I have a clear conception of a process that I want to stick to, that's going to take me somewhere or another.
right.
And
Right.
maybe that's my, that's not the best situation to be in. And with a goal, it's a lot more powerful, I feel like. But I'm getting
Well,
closer to that, and I feel like doing this is part of figuring that
yeah,
out.
it's funny because like the part you're talking about, what you're doing, your role with like being a tad, like that's the part I can never do as far as like putting it into a system or a a way and just kind of seeing how it unfolds. That to me is like the hardest part. So it's cool that you kind of do that naturally. It's almost like a
It's not
methodical.
natural, not natural at all. I've spent years doing
Yeah,
fuck all, nothing,
yeah,
just surviving day to day, being depressed.
yeah.
I
My
spent
bad. I
years
guess
doing that,
the words of natural. I guess I
and
say
it's
natural
only
because
through, if you remember, like when we started, it's about a year ago. I was going through a really hard time, and it's
yeah.
only
No,
been
I
because of
remember
being made extremely uncomfortable and extremely
conditions. Yeah,
devastated
yeah.
that I was able to push past it and see more clearly what the objective should be. And that's the thing. That's where most people are right now, I think, too. Good people,
Yeah.
bad people, whatever. Doesn't really. There's no. I don't think there's any much difference. We're sort of being put into like under a spell of the modern era to where we're not encouraged or required to acknowledge any of this. Like it's totally conceivable for somebody to go through their entire life and not have even the slightest inkling of an idea as to what we're talking about.
What are we talking about again? I'm just kidding. I am about to connect. I'm about to connect this Bluetooth headphones now, so I can.
Okay.
I hope it doesn't mess up this session. If it
No,
does,
it
I'll
should be
be.
fine. Games are fun,
Gamer
dude.
alert!
Man, Total War is such a badass game.
Man, that's funny. That was like the very first RTS. It's not even RTS, is it? But it's
Well,
but
it's like both. It's like strategy and
yeah.
RTS together.
I remember playing it on Windows 98
Yeah,
dial up.
like
Like it
Medieval
was like on
2,
the very first one way back. And I thought it was
Shogun.
the coolest
Ooh,
shit.
shit. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's still. I mean, they're still making them, dude. They're fucking badass
I bet
now.
they're pretty intense. Yeah. I mean, I was such a youngster back then. I don't even really remember, but I do remember the two kind of turn based, like it's like on a map as far as like
Yeah, like half the
um
game is like Civilization, where it's a turn-based campaign map where you move people
yeah,
around and you do politics and trade and
with the
stuff. And then
war.
when you go into battle, it's like,
That's the
woo!
dopeness. Yeah. That's where it comes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's good. I haven't. I've been intentionally not playing games. Like
Yeah.
I haven't touched any games in like a week.
Oh, he's
So hard.
fainting.
No,
He's
I mean,
fainting.
only a little bit. I was
Well, I
playing.
mean, totally.
I was playing another game too, Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice.
Oh yeah.
It's
What's
like a
that?
Dark Soul. It's made by the Dark Souls people, but it's like
Oh
way.
yeah.
It's way harder than Dark Souls. Yeah,
Really?
yeah. But
Well,
anyway,
yeah.
okay. So
Yeah.
fuck everything I said. Fuck everything you thought.
Yeah. Straight
At
up.
the end of the day, nobody can tell you anything. Nobody's going to be able to point to the truth and tell you what the truth is. No
Yeah.
scientist, no bureaucrat, no president. They're not going to be able to identify the truth. Because the truth,
Yeah.
it doesn't really exist in that way, like where it's empirical, where it's objective.
Yeah.
No matter if it's your health or your purpose in life or your assumptions about reality or spirituality or anything.
Yeah.
It has to be, and that's not to say that there's nothing that impinges on you that's the same for everyone, and then to a degree, I guess that's true. But what's the most important thing, and you look kind of throughout anything that people do, your
True.
mental
Absolutely.
environment plays
Yeah.
way, like, by far the biggest role. And
Yeah.
so the goal is for you to have like your own personal realizations about this stuff, and for you to make
Right.
your own choice. It doesn't
Right.
really matter what the choice is. It's like the thing, you making your own choice is the purpose of life. Like, and you call it
Right.
free will, you can say it's this or that. Whether or not that's what you would call it or that's what it is really immaterial.
Right.
Nothing else exists but your own
Truth.
choices. Your own, yeah, well, right,
Yeah.
your own personal truth, yeah. And if a
Yeah.
bunch of people happen to agree on it, well, then that's called, a fact, whatever. But
Yeah.
it's really no difference.
No, I feel that though. Yeah, I feel like you're right. No one can tell you like the truth exists inside of you, you know, in a sense.
Mm-hmm. Well, everything exists inside of you. There's no like even if you want to rely on the scientific interpretation, like all matter is an illusion. You know, everything that you've ever seen. I mean, you've never actually seen or tasted or touched or smelled or heard anything ever. Nobody has. It's all your brain interpreting signals that come from somewhere. We don't know where. You can't point to it and say it comes from here.
Right.
Because your brain, everything that we perceive sensorily is through the filter of our brain. And not just accepted it as fact, but like actually understanding like that you're creating your reality through your use of language and measurement and science. And that's a good thing, and that's what people need to be encouraged to do, and not only to interact with the reality that's like the predominant narrative reality, but to have their own internal reality and mythology and cosmogony to explore their mind and explore their purpose.
Yeah, for sure. Though I follow you on that for sure, Holiday. Because I mean, yeah, I'm all about that. I think that that's something that is held. I don't know. I'm just speaking on my behalf. I mean, really everyone's behalf.
Mm-hmm.
Doing that, you know what I mean? Even just being able to do that and kind of go, you know, and trying to keep yourself there. I don't know, like I could follow it when you're speaking about it, and you speak about it really clearly. And then whenever we in these sessions, like, how do you stay in that state of, is there certain procedural things that I can do, prioritize, whatever it may be, like to help me kind of regain that same energy, same momentum, and kind of relive it?
I guess so.
It's
just a matter of, okay, and that's what gets back to what we're like. I can't tell you what it is. Nobody's going to tell you what it is. You have to come to it on your own. So you have to be willing to seek it out and willing to integrate it.
Right.
Whether it's like, we were talking about COVID last time, and I don't really like doing that because everybody's got their opinion on it already, and they've made up their mind, and that's the point. You have to make up your mind. You have to come to your own conclusion. Now, it's important for you to separate whether or not your conclusion is your own or whether it's somebody else's.
Yeah.
On either side. But no ground is going to be gained in either direction until people are, making up their own mind.
Right.
So, listen to, and intuitively, like
staying open-minded.
Keep open-minded and take steps that you feel are correct. So,
right.
Do what you got to do.
For sure,
because you have to. You got to do it.
I mean, yeah, like it's becoming. I don't know. I feel like I've had such opportunities, like even with you and with my brother, and like people that are surrounding my environment. Like I've had so many chances to like really open up and really kind of dive into that healthy kind of. I say healthy. I think that it's something that's. I definitely, like you said, you got to do it because tomorrow, we're not promised tomorrow, and then it's something that present tense is super important, especially in times. I feel like times right now is super important. But even me personally, like I can definitely grasp it and have a better journey or learning or experience, have a better experience in general, just by having these kind of foundation that you kind of letting out there for me. Because every time we end up doing it, I always feel so much better once we start. Like, I don't know why I'm so procrastinative when it comes to even just doing something cool like that we enjoy doing. It's like,
well, I mean, I
keep myself back.
I can relate to that.
It's like a self-destructive nature pattern. Is that what it?
Yeah.
And it probably goes hand in hand with the drug abuse and shit. Like, I don't know, but
it's the same. It's the same behavior. It's the same routine. Because I do it too. Just not with hard drugs, but with playing video games or just thinking I don't feel like doing it. I just want to chill today. I don't want to do shit. It's the same behavior, just different. You're just like focusing on a different thing.
There's levels of.
Yeah, well, the levels. It's all the same thing. Like
It is, but I think that there's levels of destructive, like playing video game. Like there's levels of like the intensity that you take it to. Like
Yeah.
I feel like you're taking your time and you're using it much better than I have been using it.
But there's
And then
no real difference in the outcome. Maybe I'm not in the same immediate danger,
yeah,
but it's not
yeah.
getting me ahead of you in any way.
Well, I
If
feel
I'm
like
wasting my time, doesn't matter what I'm wasted on. I mean, time is the same for everyone.
yeah, yeah. I feel you. I don't know. It's if I feel like if I were to die, or you or we died both at the same time simultaneously, what we're doing now is going to affect it. Like you're talking about the state of mind where we're all sensory, like, and you put it very elaborate. I don't know how to explain it. I guess it's because I'm fucking tongue tied on this, but I'm trying to say like the way you had described it earlier. I kind of was like in that state, like I could see like clearer as far as like what it might be like. And that, it's
Yeah.
been a while since I've even imagined not only dying, but I'm saying like imagine that. Yeah, you're right. Tomorrow is not like, and I've been a lot of people I'm sure are so lost in that they think that tomorrow's it's a done deal or whatever. Like no, like we have to really definitely sit back and put a little bit of attention, focus, energy, and effort into recognizing the present and appreciating the present,
Mm-hmm.
and then also going into history like you do. So you do so well as far as going into history and looking at people, not only just regular people but great people, and just knowing the history in general. I think that's super cool because I know you kind of naturally or like you naturally have always been kind of intrigued by history. I think that and I didn't really know that, but maybe you're not, maybe you are, maybe you're just sick of it. But you know a lot about history. You know a lot of, what I mean. You know a lot more than anybody else
Well,
that I
there's
know.
plenty of people out there
I'm sure there
who
are,
would
but
beg
I
to
don't.
differ. Because well,
They
people
my
do
niggas.
devote their whole lives to learn history, and I've devoted just a couple of years, maybe or more, to it. And not
Sure.
even I'm not really so much interested in the objective parts of history as the sort of the underpinnings. Like not because I don't the month by month or year by year
Yeah,
recount
that's
of
not
every
even.
historical event. It doesn't really interest
Yeah.
me because,
No.
on the one hand, it's the same things that are happening now. I mean, people come
Yeah.
and go, empires rise and fall, wars come, and
It's the pieces that you pick
yeah.
out.
But
Oh, that's what I
I'm
like.
more interested in the things that the people thought,
Yeah.
how
Right.
they viewed the world, and
Which
how
are
it's
yeah.
not different at all. The coolest thing about history to me is how it's no different than today.
And today.
It's
Yeah.
no different at all. And people like to think like, oh, people in the past they had it bad or their lives were
Right.
worse than ours. And in some ways maybe they were, but I not even mean physically. Like yeah, there's
Right.
probably more disease and more injury and less, more preventable deaths and stuff.
Right.
But the way that their minds work is exactly the same that ours do
Right.
today. Like those people are no different than we are. And in a lot of ways, because they had a more direct connection to spirituality and psychology, and had a more like it was more socially
Yeah.
reinforced to interact with these parts of your mind because of necessity more than anything, they were
Right.
better off than we are because we're ultimately
Like a yeah.
we are disconnected not only from nature but from our own selves.
Yeah. Most definitely. That goes back to the first session that we did. Was it a week ago or so?
Uh,
Can we recap on that if you don't mind? Like
yeah, we were from last week.
yeah, the three kind of stay.
Oh yeah, well
Um,
right, like the with the Rudolf Steiner with the
yeah,
harmonic influence.
yeah. That if yeah,
Uh
that's
huh.
kind of like what you're talking about, I guess. But I thought that was super interesting,
Yeah.
and I've been meaning to go back to it, but I don't know if you wanted to touch on that again, but it
Sure.
kind of all
Yeah.
goes
Well,
together.
I did want to clarify, like, because we kind of
Yeah,
touched on it, but I felt like in retrospect, I didn't really point to exactly what it was about the harmonic influence that is
yeah,
so apparent today, and presumably was apparent in the 1900s when he talked about it. It's the notion that on any particular issue or any particular social, item, there's two camps of people on totally opposite sides of the argument that have an equal amount of convincing evidence and data that supports them entirely, and they're both eternally convinced that they're right and back it up with evidence, and they exist in like a perpetual deadlock, because one side says they have all these facts to support their side, and the other side, who's completely diametrically opposed, have all their own facts that support their argument, and they're stuck in this sort of back and forth of looking at facts as somehow tied into what their opinion should be and informing their worldview. Not seeing the subjective nature of it.
Right.
But subjective, objective, I don't know. That's really less important. But just the fact that with any kind of controversial issue, they're both sides are equally as convinced that they're right. And there's no room for discussion, there's no room for back and forth or compromise or anything. Which is bad. Whether you think that you're on the right side or not, if you're not willing to hear the other people, accept some aspect of their belief and compromise with them.
That's not good.
And that's the Ahrimanic influence. And whether it's COVID or some conspiracy or some geopolitical maneuvering or some war, some piece of legislation or some human right or some marginalized group, it's the same influence affecting all those things.
Yeah. That's what's super.
So that's what that's what
cool.
I meant by it's obvious today. Like I realized I didn't go into extreme. I didn't get into as much detail as I intended to because I was so swept up in the moment. But that's what I mean. That's what I mean by that.
Oh yeah, that harmonic.
The Ahrimanic influence.
Ahrimanic influence is some real deal shit.
That's where he talks about it being of the more intellectual or like psychological. And I may be paraphrasing him there, but the way that I'm perceiving it and the way that I can see it kind of reflected out in the world, that's definitely what it looks like. Is people are caught up in the intellectual game of debate. And just seeing that as the end all be all, like that's the reality.
Focused on the whole truth, so
right. Yeah, I mean, there's like a more there are spiritual and physical aspects to it that have to be accounted for as well.
For sure. And they just totally dismay it just because it's the
because I mean in a lot of ways, think about it. And it's not I don't want to give any more credit to the people who engage with those arguments. Like I know we were talking about how we think it's a con job or whatever, the mandates and whatever.
No,
and the fact is, it's a power grab, it's a con job, they're blowing it out of proportion, and on any number of of the bullet topics, it goes both ways. And I don't want to get into those because that's kind of feeding into it, but it's not. If you go out into the real world in the majority of the planet, you don't see this divide. Like you don't see people arguing over masks and shit like that.
Yeah.
At least not where I am. I don't think it's like that where you are either. I would be willing to bet if you go out.
No, it's not.
You're just going to see regular people living their life, which is what should be going on. So it's the media apparatus, the technological, the social media, the internet, whatever, is what's pushing it. And they're pushing it for attention, for clicks, for views, and profit. And that's fine. I'm willing to do that too.
It's the internal shift, though.
Yeah, so we are accepting donations. If you like what you're hearing.
Straight up. But yeah, the internal shift of it is what I think that grabbed me by what you're talking about as far as like all that's happening, but on a deeper scale, or looking at it, how it's affecting human personal, like their personal preferences of reality even, or whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm. They just choose your own reality. And and that's good. I mean, ultimately, that's the reality of the situation. Like I say, the influence can't be averted. It can't be reasoned with. It can't be rejected. It has to be acknowledged, and it has to be. You have to like don't let it control you. You got to be able to control it.
Yeah.
If that means staying out of it, if that means pushing things in the direction you want it to go, ultimately, I think that is compared to previous times in history, that is a unique thing to our current age, is that we are at a point where it can go either way,
We can
and
make
people
that.
have an active role in it, and I think people should have a more active role in it if they, be the change you want to see in the world. That's never been more
Yeah.
true than it is right now.
Yeah.
Because people are
Totally.
looking, because people are so shut off from this, and they're so
Looking,
caught up
yeah.
in their mind and not out in the world, and they're in fear. They're looking for people to
Open up.
signal which is the good way
Yeah.
to go.
Most definitely, bro.
And which is
I
it the
agree
way is it the
wholeheartedly.
way that condemns people based on arbitrary choices?
You know,
Is it the way that
maybe.
that wants to restrict people, or is it the way that wants to allow people to be what they want to be?
Yeah, and just kind of seamlessly just adapt and live life and then kind of correlate, coexist in a coherent, seamless,
Well, if
loving,
I don't, I
eloquent.
mean, I don't know if it's, yeah, it's coherence would be good,
Yeah,
but even harmony will work.
even just awareness of it in general. I think, like you said, like that is huge. That's important. Like that's for even like for me, and I'm sure for tons of other people. Like there's no awareness. Like that's where it has to start. And so even before I even start talking to you, I didn't have any awareness. I would say that I almost felt like and I don't know shit about it now, but I know that just having some sort of milestone, like an awareness of saying, oh, this is an idea, this is a way to approach it or whatever, to think about it, to start, to initiate it in a way I've never really thought about, not let alone, all the um, all the aspects of it that are true and that you can kind of relate to it as far as with history or whether it's with personal,
Yeah.
you know,
Well, that's
or
what
with
my
the friendship, like we have, we use that also, I think, to help kind of unfold the awareness for someone like me and for someone for like you. But we all have to play our roles also, like I'm totally cool with being the student and you being the sensei in a sense. When it comes to this, when it comes to
that.
this,
Yeah,
especially,
that's
you know
not
what I
what
mean?
it is though.
And so you say that, but for me, that is kind of what it is, and that's
Because
okay
I
with
mean,
me.
I'm a student. I'm my own student. I'm learning
Of
from.
course you are,
I'm learning
but
my own
for
lesson.
yeah, but I feel like I'm cool with like totally accepting that fact that I'm learning a lot from you, and you may say you're learning a lot from me as well, and that may be true, but it's all part of the it's all part of the natural. I hate that word natural. Now I don't know where I'm going with it. I'm just gonna stop.
It's
But
all
yeah,
good.
no, it's definitely a privilege as far as you may need a listener. You may need someone to just throw it at.
Well,
Pull the deep, you know,
that is a lot of it. Just
pull, just sit back.
because the thought of just and I, like this whole thing, I'm just getting started with, and it's going to take practice, and I have to accept the fact that I'm not going to be as good at it as I want to be right off the rip. And the thought of just looking at the camera and
Mm,
saying this stuff with nobody to like bounce it off of and
that's
go back and
super.
forth with
Yeah,
is not something I'm comfortable with right now. But if I can
it's,
bridge the gap by having it be a collaborative thing,
yeah,
that's an easier way to get started. I think it's just get
for
practice,
sure.
just practice talking, practice the presentation, practice the
Yeah,
flow of taking notes and figuring out what I want to talk about and being present enough to like have the energy. Because like even right now, as we've been talking, I'm feel
yeah,
obligated to do it today, so because I want to put it out
right,
tomorrow.
right.
But I think that's just part of it. Because if you're
Let
in,
me tell you this.
if
Let me tell you this, Holiday. You keep it up. Like you have. I remember I was talking about the potential. Like you have you definitely you can whatever limits you're trying to reach, you say that but you're definitely right. You're only going to get better, and I can see that happening at a much faster and larger space and than you could ever really imagine, bro. For real, and I mean that. Like I said, it with sincerity and respect, because
you know, you have that fucking, I can see, you know what I mean? Like, I can see the fact that we're just spilling it out and it's all rough draft, beta stage, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, you're right, with practice and with you know, with kind of just figuring it out, that's the process of it. And I'll tell you this, like, it's definitely going to, if we continue to do it in a way that, you know, it's both engaging for both, you know, for you and for me.
Yeah.
You're only going to you have what it takes, bro, to definitely.
I feel that too.
Shred it, bro,
and it's
for
like what you're
sure.
talking about earlier with people, you know, with people doubting on the process, right? And, you know, and like
Yeah.
saying, oh, well, it's not automatically like the thing that I want it to be, so it's not going to work at all.
So narrow-minded, like.
Do not disturb yourself by picturing your life as a whole. Do not assemble in your mind the many and varied troubles which have come to you in the past and will come again in the future. But ask yourself with regard to every present difficulty, what is there in this that is unbearable and beyond endurance? You would be ashamed to confess it, and then remind yourself that it is not the future or what is past that afflicts you, but always the present, and the power of this is much diminished if you take it in isolation and call your mind to task if it thinks that it cannot stand up to it when taken on its own. So that's Marcus Aurelius as well. And he's basically saying that you have to look at what's right in front of you. You have to do the thing that's happening now, and if you get caught up with the thing that you think is going to happen or that happened before, you're going to fuck yourself.
You dropping that truth on him. For real.
Well, this guy, I mean, and there's plenty
I
more.
like
There's
that,
plenty
though.
more.
Like,
He's got hundreds or thousands of these little quips like that
Yeah.
that he wrote. Do you ever see the movie The Gladiator
Yeah, of course.
with Russell Crowe? Well, Marcus Aurelius is the old guy at the beginning. You remember?
Okay.
Where they're
that
out
dies.
in Gaul or whatever fighting the barbarians. Yeah, and his son kills him. That's Marcus Aurelius.
Oh.
Yeah.
So they just totally skipped him. Kind of. I mean,
Well, I mean
always
that's well.
thought
I think it's debated over whether or not his son actually killed him in real life. But his son was his co-ruler at the time that he died. And when his son took over, he was pretty much a piece of shit and didn't want to do any of this stuff. So it's sort. I mean, it's accurate in that.
Who's Russell Crowe in that?
Russell Crowe is the gladiator. Yeah, I guess. Well, he was like a general or something in the army, right? And then after Marcus Aurelius died, he got like thrown in prison and had to fight his way back to freedom through gladiatorial fights. I think it's been like 10 or 15 years since I've seen that movie, but
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
It's a good movie, though.
Yeah.
It's a good movie.
Well, it's weird that you don't have any. When I was a kid and I watched it, I had no conception of the time and place of Rome and the emperor and what all this really meant, like in historical
I
context.
still don't.
Well, I barely do. I'm only just now getting to the
Yeah.
point where I'm like have somewhat of a grasp on it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's who that was.
Yeah, no, I knew when you said the name. That's funny because that's where I related to it first. Glad it was Hollywood for Russell Crowe.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
know,
that's a good.
Yeah, it's a good flick.
That is a way that we relate to things. I forgot where I was gonna go with the end of things here.
Where we're going here? Let me show you where we're going. 1 second. Like, what's he doing? This is where we're gonna go with that shit right here. And don't take my goofiness as a means of. It's all because we all about having a good time in the present, right?